Hi, I'm Ryan Hamilton, and I'm here at WK Kellogg Biological Station, and we're here looking at the Winter Malting Barley Variety Trial Test Plots, or WMBT for short. The WMBT is a project that looks at the viability of winter malting barley varieties across many different environments and locations. It's a project headed up by Dr. Kevin Smith at University of Minnesota, and there's around 40 varieties, both experimental and commercially released named varieties. This is LCS Calypso. It's a 2-row malting barley, winter growth habit. It was released by Lima Grain Cereal Seeds. It's rapidly become in the short time that it's been available to us here in Michigan, it's rapidly become the most widely grown winter 2-row. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it has very profound dormancy, so it might not have its full viability for malting or germination until 2 to 3 months or even more after harvest time, which can be problematic for a maltster because they have to store it, or the grower has to store it on farm until it's ready to be malted. But it provides a great safety net for pre-harvest sprout. So its great advantage here in the state can also be its greatest weakness. Since it hasn't been grown all that long in Michigan, we don't have a whole lot of data to draw from about how it performs in the malt house or in the brew house. But pre-harvest sprout is a big problem in our region and many other states that are like ours. So Calypso is very promising, and it was a good yielder last year, around 78 bushels per acre. And it had very low DON accumulation, so deoxynivalenol, which is a mycotoxin produced by the fungus Fusarium, affects pretty much all cereal grains. Last year was a particularly bad year for DON, and a lot of the lines that we had in the trial last year had well above the 1 ppm mark, which is the benchmark for acceptance for malting. But this was at 0.8, so it was acceptable, and relative to the rest of the varieties was quite good. Let's take a closer look in here at one of the heads. So as we can see here, it's nice bright golden. We don't see much weathering or staining on the kernels. The awns are relatively smooth and bright, looking really good. No serious signs of disease here. I'm seeing a little spotting on the leaves, but it appears to be okay. The one thing I am noticing about the head is there's a little dark point on that kernel right there, but beyond that, the kernels aren't significantly plump. I would say those are a little bit thin, but what I see with my eyes isn't necessarily going to be the case when it gets tested post-harvest and malting quality is assessed. But relative to the other varieties out here, I think the kernels look a little thin. And I'm going to pluck one off. And spoiler, I already chewed one, but it's not quite ready to harvest just yet. I can chew it and it didn't break my teeth, so it's still at relatively high moisture content, but not to the point where it couldn't necessarily be harvested soon and then dried down at a low temperature. This is LCS Puffin. It's another Lima grain variety. It's a 2-row malting barley. In fact, I think we're only going to be talking about winter 2-row malting barleys, although there are 6 rows out here. The kernels and heads look very bright. No significant signs of disease that I'm seeing, which is great. It yielded comparably to Calypso and also had 0.8 average DON accumulation last year, so right on par with Calypso, and in fact it's the second most widely grown variety in Michigan right now. One drawback from a malting perspective to Puffin that I would point out is its high beta-glucan content. Brewers are looking for somewhere between 100 to 150 or lower beta-glucan content, and that's parts per million. Last year we were seeing around 250 parts per million beta-glucan in this Puffin, but as long as the maltster is aware that that's a factor, and the brewer is aware that's a factor in this particular variety of barley, and they're okay with that, then there should be no issues for the grower for fulfilling their contract, provided all the other specifications are met. It's been a good performer so far in Michigan and Ohio, and I have high hopes for it. Hi, I'm Ryan Hamilton here in beautiful Cuckolin, Michigan, right at the bottom of Saginaw Bay, near the base of the thumb, if you will. And we're here looking at the second of 2 winter malting barley trial sites. Along with Kellogg Biological Station Hickory Corners, this trial site looks at the performance of 40 different malting barley varieties to gain a better understanding of how winter malting barley performs across the state of Michigan. We wouldn't be able to do this second site without the cooperation of our farmer partner Don Shelagowski, whose land this is, and also Chris Schmidt of Chris Schmidt Farms of Auburn, who has helped us immensely with making this trial such a success. As I said, there's over 40 varieties in this trial, and I'd like to have a closer look and talk to you more about some of the specific ones that I think are important for our region. This is a beautiful stand of LCS Calypso. I'm very happy with what I'm seeing here. Great plump kernels, nice bright golden color. The stand's a little bit tall, but that's okay. It's just beautiful. Calypso is the top choice for Michigan for winter 2 rows, mostly because of its excessively long dormancy period, which is a great safeguard against pre-harvest sprout. Between the 2 sites last year, KBS and Cuckolin, where we're at now, there was really no significant differences, and it was really the same between most analytical parameters that we measure, except yield. The yield was in the 70s at KBS, and here we yielded an average of 108 bushels per acre, which is phenomenally good, just excellent. Don was within 0.2 parts per million of each other, both below the 1 ppm threshold. RVA numbers were within 2 of each other, and we're talking about numbers that you want it to be above 120, so they're rather large numbers, so 2 RVA is really insignificant. So we see consistent performance across both sites, with the exception of yield. And I think that is what makes it a great candidate for Michigan. So consistency for fusarium infection, consistency in sprouting or lack thereof. And those are key parameters for getting accepted into malting. Having that 30 bushel per acre plus yield bump is great too, but 108 bushels per acre of barley that doesn't meet malting quality isn't much good to you. So even at 70 and it passes muster, that's still great. I just like Calypso a lot, and I think it's performing very well. So here we're looking at LCS Puffin. It's a 2-row malting barley. It is currently exclusive to Origin Malts in Ohio, so anyone that's interested in growing Puffin or currently growing Puffin is going to be contracting with that malting company alone. The stand looks nice and bright, and it's rather short, so there's no lodging issues. Last year at this site we averaged about 70 bushels per acre compared to Kellogg Biological Station, where the trial plots averaged in the 80s, so a bit lower. Slightly higher protein, about 1.5% higher protein here in Cuckolin. Notable though was the Don accumulation, so the fusarium infection appeared to be lower here, so 0.3 parts per million Don, as opposed to KBS, which was 0.8, which was creeping up to that 1 parts per million threshold for rejection for malting. One thing that stands out to me about this stand though is we've got some fungal contamination on this head here, and you can see that it's rather dark and weathered and stained, and you can see spots of black, which is evidence of fungal contamination to me. Thankfully it's not across the whole stand, and it's isolated to a few heads here. Right next to it here you can see one that's nice and bright and plump and gold and looks very ripe and very nice. It's a very nice barley head, and most of the plot is like that. So overall I'd say it's a good performer here, in spite of some disease that you'd want to look out for.